Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to have you with us today. We have an amazing panel who's going to be joining us, and I'm so grateful to my partners, Rabbi Sidney Mintz and Rabbi Matthew Gewirtz, who are coming up on the screen right now and representing their congregations. We're so pleased to be in partnership with Emanu-El in San Francisco and B'nai Jeshurun in Short Hills. Sidney, Matthew, thank you so much for being part of this. And please say some words of welcome to folks.
Welcome, everyone. It's so good to have you here, see a lot of you from our congregation on our participant screen. So we're happy to have you here. These are painful and complex times, and more important than ever that we come together as congregations, but also in partnership with our dear friends, United Hatzalah, and the incredible work they're doing, not just in Israel, but obviously in other places of the world as well. Welcome, everyone.
I share that sentiment. It is very, very troubling what we're involved with right now. And this organizations like Hatzalah give us incredible hope to move forward and to move together to do what we can from so far away. So thanks for being with us. And as always, Matt Gewirtz, Yoshi Zweiback, you bring such wonderful, wonderful content and program to the Jewish people.
Thank you, Sidney. We have an amazing panel that we put together, and we're grateful to our friends at United Hatzalah for making this happen. You're going to see that we're going to be joined by people from all over the world who are involved in this effort. And that's something that gives me a great sense of hope, thinking about an optimism, really thinking about the way that people can come together to make good things happen in the face of a really challenging situation. We're going to show a brief video at the start just to introduce you to United Hatzalah. I know there are some people on the call who know the organization very well, but there might be some others who don't. So Arjun, please go ahead and bring that video up and we'll all learn a little bit more about the work. And just make sure you're unmuted there, Arjun, so we can all hear the video from the start.
Hey, you need to unmute yourself.
It is unmuted.
You have to make sure the audio is fine.
Thank you so much. Sorry about the sound issue, but you got the video and you got to see the work. And we'll put a link into the chat with that video, so participants, if you want to be able to watch that later, you'll be able to. It's an honor to invite Michael Brown to join us. He's the Vice President of Friends of United Hatzalah, and he's joining us from Geneva. And Michael has been a great partner in this work. And Michael, tell us a little bit more about what's been going on, in particular in Moldova, as part of United Hatzalah's response to the crisis in Ukraine.
Thank you so much for having myself and everyone here to talk about this critically important humanitarian mission. I'm going to share just a few details about the scope of the operation. You're going to hear from our Director of Operations about the work that's happening right now on the ground, and from our Emergency Operations Coordinator what the situation is with the refugees in Moldova. But before we get to that, I just want to introduce Eli Beer, who is the founder of United Hatzalah in Israel, is joining us actually from Los Angeles today. It seems every day he's in a different city around the world. Eli, thank you so much for joining us. If you can turn on your screen and just tell us a little bit about United Hatzalah. Thank you so much.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank all of you for being part of this very, very important and critical mission. of saving human beings, running out of the worst human disaster in our lifetime. And it's a great honor to work with all of you. And I want to thank a special thanks to Dina Kadisha for all the work, Aspen, actually Dina Kadisha Aspen, that she actually initiated a lot of this work here. So I just want to share with you a little about United Hatzalah and what's the mission and why this was started. So it's really a group of volunteers from Israel who started this. I started this when I was a young boy, 16 years old. I was a volunteer in the back of an ambulance, and I used to see being stuck in traffic on the way to emergencies. I used to see motorcycles passing by on our right and left and on the way to deliver pizza, and we were stuck in traffic while we were trying to save someone's life. And after about a year and a half being a volunteer in an ambulance, I realized that our average response time was 17 minutes. It was impossible to save someone's life in that time. And you could actually choke and call for an ambulance and call for a pizza. The pizza would come there first. So I actually decided to start a new organization with volunteers my age, 16, 17, 18 years old, to respond to emergencies before ambulances from the community. And it just started as an idea, we were very young and we didn't think it's going to get to where it is now, just to get to emergencies that are happening nearby us. All of us were trained. We started buying motorcycles and equipping it like ambulances. So we call it ambucycles. We had walkie-talkies. We would break into the ambulance system to hear their emergency so we would know something is happening nearby us. And the first person I saved was a man who was 70 years old who was hit by a car. And he was right near where I was. I heard on the walkie-talkie, on the CB, if you remember what that is, it's a scanner. I heard this person was hit, so I just ran there and I saw him on the floor bleeding terribly from his neck, and I stopped his bleeding. And I used my yarmulke that I had on my head to stop his bleeding because I had no bandages on me. I was 16 and a half years old. 2 days later, when I woke up in the hospital, I visited him and I saw him very weak, but he gave me the best hug in the world. I never got such a great hug. And he thanked me for saving his life. And that changed my life because when he took his hands off me, I saw he had a number on his arm, number and some letters. And I will never forget standing there in Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem with a 70-year-old man who I saved when I was 16 years old. And I realized how easy it is to save people if you get there fast enough. And this is what I do my whole life. We treat about 675,000 people every year, in average, for free. We're the only free volunteer emergency services in Israel from A to Z, from taking care of them from the moment something happens to them until ambulances arrive and take them to the hospital. And when I got this call from Ukraine, from volunteers of Hatzalah, United Hatzalah, who lived in Ukraine and operated a United Hatzalah there, I actually was devastated when I heard what was going on. And I got a phone call from a woman who asked me to save her one-day-old baby that was born for a woman who carried her baby. She's an Israeli living in near Modi'in. And she said to me that 9 months ago, she took a surrogate to carry her baby because she couldn't have children. And she said the baby girl was born yesterday and in a shelter underneath a building. And she said, I need to save my little baby. And she was crying, please save her. I said, how could I say no to saving a little one-day-old baby? It took us 36 hours to get that baby out. It was a Mossad operation, more or less, by volunteers of United Hatzalah. This little baby is 1 month old now. Her name is Shane, and she lives in Modi'in, near Modi'in, in a city called Shoham. This little baby girl is alive today because volunteers risk their lives to get this baby out. This is what we started a month ago. And when I reached out to all the volunteers in Israel and asked them who wants to go help out in Ukraine in the situation, the borders there and the refugees, Jews and non-Jews alike, and bring them into Israel, whoever could come into Israel. And I had 1,000 hands raised, and every single volunteer that raised their hand said, we're willing to go and put our lives in danger just to save other people's lives. So thank you very much for enabling us to do this. And thank you, Michael, for your work behind the scenes.
Thank you very much, Ellie, for everything you do and for joining today. You mentioned 1,000 volunteers raised their hands to come, and I wanted to share a short video from yesterday.
So the people of Israel are standing with Ukraine in so many ways. And not just this field hospital. Thousands came out to Tel Aviv's Habima Square to protest against Kremlin's war. When United Hatzalah asked for volunteers to go to Moldova to aid the many refugees who are arriving there, more than 1,000 volunteers raised their hands to do just that. And it's not just the people of Ukraine and Russia who are feeling the impact.
So this was Secretary of State Blinken at his news conference with Yair Lapid, Foreign Minister in Israel, and Naftali Bennett, the Prime Minister, speaking about the work of United Hatzalah. So Eli, thank you so much. I now want to give everyone a very quick overview of what our operation has been on the ground in the region. I'm just going to share a few short slides just to give you context for where we're operating. If you look on the bottom right is Moldova, right next southwest part of Ukraine. We've been operating on 2 borders of Moldova, Palanka and Mogilov, as refugees come over the border, bringing them into the capital city of Kishinev, where we have a field hospital and soup kitchen and housing. And then we've actually been flying plane loads of refugees from Moldova, from Romania, from Lithuania, tomorrow actually from Poland, bringing plane loads of refugees from the region to Israel to be resettled in Israel. And we'll talk more about this, but this has become a very important part of what we're doing to respond to the crisis. Initially, we sent a group of just 15 volunteers with a small amount of humanitarian equipment, and the amount of equipment we brought was exhausted in just a few days. The need was just absolutely enormous. So what we did is we increased our presence on the ground with more medics. We started our airlifts, and to date we've now treated more than 22,000 refugees. We've served more than 40,000 meals. We have a very big team on the ground working around the clock. We've brought 60 tons of aid, including medicine and medical equipment, kosher food. It's just an enormous operation, the scale of this. As I said, we're operating at these 2 border crossings. We've got field hospitals set up at the border crossings in the capital Kishinev, and we've got 6 countries, now a 7th, that are coordinating this rescue mission. And then on these actual flights, it's actually become its own operation. We've got 40 people working at our operations center in Israel, preparing these humanitarian supplies and medical equipment to be able to get on the planes. We've now actually sponsored 28 flights. The number of refugees that we brought is over 2,000, and we've got a whole processing center in Kishinev set up to actually provide the papers that are needed, the travel papers for people to be able to come into Israel. So it's become a very big operation on the ground between Israel and Moldova and the countries surrounding. And we now are shifting our scope because there are other aid organizations that are coming in and helping to provide some of the longer term needs for these refugees. And we've seen that there's a particular need inside Ukraine for helping people get out of the country, especially vulnerable people and Holocaust survivors, and get medicine and medical equipment into the country. So I'm very pleased to introduce Dovi Maisel, our Vice President of Operations, who is overseeing this from between Israel and Kishinev, to talk about these 2 new pieces of the critical work that we're doing on the ground. Dovi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Rabbis. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to share a little bit about what's been going on. So Michael gave a briefing of what we've been doing for the past month. And like Michael said, what we're starting to focus on, what we've identified in the past week, is the growing need of work within Ukraine, number one. First of all, medical evacuations within Ukraine, getting out. There are many Holocaust survivors that are still trapped in their homes, can't go anywhere, in the different cities in Kyiv and Odessa and Kharkiv and others that need to be gotten out of there and out of harm's way into neighboring countries. And of course, the supply chain of medical supplies to the hospitals. We see a huge growing need, and hospitals coming forward, giving us literally lists over lists over lists of medical supplies that they need in order for them to perform their day-to-day jobs. And of course, the war-related injuries in the operating rooms etc. So understanding that this is a situation, we're still working on the ground in Moldova with our team there with the refugees, but we've been moving forward in the past week and started purchasing ambulances within Ukraine and reinforcing our teams on the ground in the different cities there and focusing every day, getting people out, transporting them, first of all, from the eastern cities of Ukraine out to the western city of Lviv and across the border into Poland and into Moldova. Additionally, we've done some transports to the Israeli hospital, which was deployed just outside of Lviv near the Polish border. And while we see the growing need, there's not only the transports, but there's also those critically ill patients that need to be transported out to a higher level of care. And those are being performed out to Poland and to Moldova, Romania, and from there on to Israel, where we're airlifting these patients on special medevac flights to Israel. Regarding the supply chain, we see, like we said, the growing demand is not only for medical supplies, it's for food, basic toiletries, sanitary equipment, etc. So what we've been doing over the past week is creating a secure, what's the word for it in English, a secure passageway for supplies from actually Slovakia, from the eastern city in Slovakia of Kosice, which is about an hour out of the border of the Ukrainian border and neighboring to the city of Ozhgorod, where we've actually put together a logistical center resembling the one that we have here in Israel, and working with the Slovakian government to get approval. And we've thank God gotten that approval, and we're starting cargo flights tomorrow. The first cargo flight will be leaving Israel full of, I think it's about 20 tons of medical supplies for the hospitals, food and basic necessities, toiletries, medication, etc., which will be landing in Kosice and then via ground crossing the border into Ozhgorod, Ukraine, where we have already our volunteers put together that logistical center and put their hands on a whole bunch of trucks that will be distributing this equipment out to the different hospitals throughout Ukraine and to the communities in need of these basic necessities. In the interim, we haven't stopped doing the other operations. Tomorrow we have an additional flight leaving Israel, a rescue flight for refugees, which will be flying out to Warsaw tomorrow afternoon, picking up 120 refugees from Warsaw and bringing them back to Israel. And on Thursday, we have an additional rescue flight of refugees coming back from Moldova, meaning we keep on adding additional layers and focusing on the immediate needs, yet not forgetting about those things we started off with. The feedback is truly amazing. I can just say that seeing those medical teams in the hospitals, receiving, just in the past few days, we've delivered to over 15 hospitals medical supplies. I'm talking about the most basic things, antibiotics. We're talking about searcher kits. We're talking about those very basic things that you can literally find in any pharmacy back in the US. These simply do not exist in Ukraine, and we're trying to meet the demand. We're working with many lists, and with the great support, we're able to hopefully fulfill as much as we can on the different fronts. So thank you for the support. It's truly amazing, inspiring, and let us be your shlichim on the ground.
Ovi, I just have a question about that. First of all, amazing to hear what you've done so quickly, and I know that you have the know-how to do such a thing because of the work that you've done and because of stories like the one that Eli started with. In terms of sourcing all of this equipment and everything, is everything coming from Israel? Are you bringing in supplies from other parts of the world, or is it all basically sourced from Israel?
So at the moment, we're bringing it all from Israel, simply from a logistics perspective. We're not a DHL company. We don't know how to do global transportations. If you would have asked me a month ago if I know how to charter a plane, I'd laugh at you and say, "What are you talking about? I know how to drive an ambucycle." But now, 25 planes later, and learning these things on the go. So we're having things shipped from Israel. However, we are working on this secure passageway through Kosice in Slovakia. And once we establish this ability to bring it from other countries as well, we will be able to. Yet there are limitations there. We can't fly in big planes there, only smaller planes. So there are many things. You see, I've become an aviation expert over the past few weeks. But we are looking for the solution to get things sourced in other places as well, in Europe and in other places.
By the way, I don't recommend doing the ambi-cycle from Israel to Ukraine. Bad idea.
Probably not.
Hey, Dovi, I'm interested in, I'm always so impressed by how Hatzalah, so the recipe behind the magic is the logistics, besides, of course, the heart and soul we bring in. How in such quick order were you able to connect with Ukrainian authorities, Polish authorities, to make sure that you get clearance to do all of this? You can't even do anything with a passport through a regular, foreign service these days. How did you guys work this out in such short order?
I'd say it's the spice that started this organization, and that is Israeli chutzpah. We just did it because we understood. I mean, we found in Moldova, the airspace closed immediately in Moldova when the war started. The airport was closed, the airspace was closed because of fear of missiles coming in from leaking in from Russia. And we understood. We started transferring equipment through Romania, and it was just impossible. It was impossible. It was getting stuck at borders and traveling for hours. And then we just went. We literally ran upstairs. We went to the Moldavian ambassador to Israel, and told him, "Listen, you want help? We're here to help make it happen." And we just started pulling connections and calling people using a lot of chutzpah. And eventually, it took a couple of days, but they opened up the airspace. And the first plane that landed in Moldova from the beginning of the war was our plane that brought 50 volunteers on it and 15 tons of equipment. And from then, it literally opened up the skies for humanitarian assistance.
Dovi, thank you so much for everything you've been doing and for taking some time to join us today, for figuring all this complexity out and being able to deliver so much care and compassion to this refugee population. Thank you very much. I now would like to introduce Linor Attias. Linor is our Emergency Operations Coordinator. She has been on the ground in Moldova for the last 4 weeks, going back and forth between Moldova and Israel at times. Linor, thank you so much for joining us. And if you could maybe share a little bit about what this experience has been for you on the ground as you see the refugees coming over the border, as you bring them into Kishinev, as you help them get from Kishinev to the airport to get on a plane finally to safety in Israel.
Okay, hi, thank you everyone. I just got back to Israel after escorting a plane loaded of refugees from Kishinev, and I'm going back to Kishinev very soon. I just want to share with you a story that I met 4 days ago. Her name is Polina, a 67 years old woman, and I met her on Palanka border. She was with bruises on her face from explosions. And at the border, of course, I treat her wounds. And then I accompanied her and hundreds more refugees who just crossed the border with Polina to our refugee center in Kishinev. And I don't know why, but I just sat with her. And while she was in a soup, this comforting food, she told me the horrors that she went through. It took her 38 hours to leave Ukraine and enter to Moldova. She saw the bodies of civilians, children, men and women, along the streets of her city, Kharkov. She realized that it was better for her to try to escape than to do nothing to save her life. And then she started to cry. She was choking from her tears. It was the first moment she grieved on her husband. She was standing at the window of their house and she saw him standing in the line to receive some bread, and a tank just drove on the civilians there that were standing on the line to get some bread. And her husband was between them. I took care of all her documents, and on yesterday's flight, she rescue flight of 169 passengers, refugees from Ukraine. She arrived to Israel. This is what we are doing there since day one, 24/7. We provide medical care and mental health care and humanitarian aid, and we bring them to a safe place in the state of Israel. They go through days of painful and dangerous journey. In the snow, in the rain, we treat hypothermia in pregnant women and babies. And on top of the others mission Dovi just told you about inside Ukraine, in medical rescue, and also to bring in medical equipment and medicine to the various forces inside Ukraine, we are going to be there, we're going to stay there on the ground and to help any refugees that need us.
Linor, thank you so much. The stories, I've heard some of your experiences, and they're haunting, but they're also a reminder of why it's so important that you and the volunteers are there to help these people. And so thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. It's all because of your support. We couldn't do it without it.
And I'll just add, Linor has two young daughters who have basically been living with her sister for the last month while she spends 6.5 days of the week on the ground in Kishinev managing this operation for us. So Linor, thank you for your individual sacrifice as well to make this all happen.
These stories are so powerful and heartbreaking and also heartwarming. And I wanted to ask Dina Aspen, who's a member of Stephen Wise Temple and is a national board member of United Hatzalah, and she's the reason that we first got involved, even though I'm well aware of the amazing work that United Hatzalah has done. Dina reached out with this idea of partnering for trying to raise money for a flight to Moldova, and then reached out to Rabbi Sidney and Rabbi Matthew, and they said they wanted to do this webinar. TBJ in Short Hills is our partner in raising funds for this project. But Dina, you shared with me the other day an incredible story of a way that United Hatzalah provided very individual on the ground support that I think is so important, because sometimes people ask, with all the other international aid organizations doing that work, what do you need another place like that? And we talked about how nimble, and it's what Ellie said at the beginning, the Israeli chutzpah of like, no, we can do that. We'll figure out how to charter planes and do this effectively and efficiently. But tell everybody that story, because I think it's amazing. Just to go ahead and unmute. Go ahead and unmute.
There we go. Good morning and good evening to some of you. I'm grateful to be here with you all, and I'm so incredibly proud of the work that's being done. So a story I'd like to share with you all. I received a phone call from Tammy Weiser, head of school at Wise, who told me that we had a family in our community who had relatives in Ukraine. This person was a stage 4 cancer patient and was taking care of his bedridden parents, along with another elderly couple who don't have the means to get around and evacuate. The hospitals are out of medicine, and for those who are the most vulnerable, like cancer patients or those who need specialized medical attention, it's a very dire situation. And we were able to get the meds that he needed, specific for his situation, gathered in Israel, brought over on one of our United Hatzalah planes, and delivered by hand to their home. He was very close to running out of what he needed, and this is a specific example of helping those around us in our community, and I am so proud. How far did I get?
Being proud of the community.
heard everything until you said, "I'm so proud." The very last part.
Yes. So, it's just extraordinary. I mean, that's a specific example of how, our outreach goes far beyond people that we know. And also this affected somebody directly in our community and their family. And because of that, they have more time. So it's really special. As the war continues to escalate, the needs are growing exponentially. And right now, our limiting factor is more funding for medical evacuations from inside Ukraine. So assisting the most vulnerable, which is not only elderly, but also Holocaust survivors, infants, people who need that assistance, as well as prioritizing cargo planes full of medicine and medical equipment to be able to distribute to communities inside Ukraine. We have a very small window of time to fly our supplies in and get it into the hands of those who need it the most. And our teams of highly trained medics and doctors are directly impacting the quality of life for these Ukrainians.
Dina, this is extraordinary. And on top of this being, first of all, thank you for organizing this. Thank you for putting people together. Thank you for putting your neshama behind this to make this possible. A lot of good is happening because of the group that you pulled together for this project. And as you were speaking about this delivery of cancer medicine to this family of the community, Dovi actually texted me on the side and said, "Oh my God, you mean this mission we spent whatever it was 36 hours on to make sure it happened? That was what this meant." And so Dovi's just hearing about this from you for the first time. So thank you for that as well. I want to continue a little bit on what you mentioned as the priorities. There was one question though I wanted to turn it back over to Dovi. I think a couple of people asked this question in different ways, which is basically who from the refugee population is coming into Israel? Who are the people that are able to get on a flight and come into Israel right now?
So in general, we're working according to the go, no go protocol that the state of Israel implemented. It means anyone who can get an okay to come into the country, meaning we don't want to take any people that will end up being turned around and flown back. And those are anyone that has a right of return and even a Ukrainian passport that they can enter as tourists. They don't have to be Jewish. Anyone who obviously has the right to make aliyah, or of course those who do carry Israeli passports from years ago, even expired passports of many years. Any sort of document, basically any travel document that is official, can essentially make it into Israel. And we're taking primarily those who are not making aliyah per se, because those are taken on aliyah flights. So we get full planes of people who were actually turned away by other agencies that are doing the aliyah program, but we're able to get them out of harm's way and off of mattresses in a football stadium, in a basketball stadium, and get them to Israel, and whether to relatives, friends, a hotel, or whatever it is, back here until either things calm down or another solution is found.
Dovi, thank you so much for that. Oh, sorry, Rabbi Gewirtz, please.
No, I really, again, I'm just so inspired, and some of these stories were already known to me before, but then now to hear them in this kind of detail and to hear them from the folks who sometimes were on the ground, and then seeing the way Dovi and Dina, we're working together on something and didn't even know it. Sid, were you trying to get in, please?
Yeah, I had a question. How much longer can this operation subsist on the resources that you have in terms of bringing people into Israel? Is there any limit into the number of immigrants, refugees, new olim who will be able to be supported getting to Israel once they get there?
And Dovi, can I just piggyback on that and ask how you're absorbing them? Like, what literally are you doing with them when they get there?
Okay, so essentially there is no limit. Anyone who is allowed to enter the country can enter the country with any travel document that is allowed to come in. What happens with them here, Rabbi? That's a fantastic question. So there are the official agencies here Misrad Aliyah V'Klita. I don't know all the names in English of the different ministries that are operating, but also different organizations, and also us ourselves are now kicking in our phase 2 in Israel, and that's following up with the people that we're bringing in to see what special needs they have. Are they set up? Do they need basic necessities? Do they need help with the getting organized in a longer term solution, and others? There's no absolute answer for that question. It's a working process between us, the government agencies, and other organizations that are working on the ground. We see an amazing movement in Israel here of the community coming together to help these people that are showing up, starting from their welcoming at the airport, from the different Bnei Akiva and seminaries and yeshivas and whatever and teenagers that come to the airport to greet them, and from there on into the communities. So it's a process, and I think more and more are coming together now to find a better solution. At the beginning, people were being left at the airport to sleep on the floor for 20 hours. So it took them about a week, but then they finally understood that they have hotels just 20 minutes away, and they started taking hotels and putting them in a hotel. So it's a working process, and us as well, we're trying to at least follow up on the 2,000 plus people that we brought to see what special needs they have, and leverage of our power in the community here in Israel to come together and help them as individuals and as an organization.
We understand the need for resources. Obviously, we have a question here, Michael and maybe Dovi, about medical volunteers, those who are legitimately medical volunteers for the United States. Are you looking for them to come to Israel, to come to Ukraine with you, etc.?
Yeah, thank you very much. Dovi, I'll just mention that we have a link which I'll share around for people to register, that they are medical doctors and they are available to travel. So I will share that so that with you also, we can get that out to people who want to register. And I just wanted to also mention, Rabbi Gewirtz, we have someone from your community here, as was mentioned earlier, Mark Gerson, who is our national board chair, and we're just so pleased to have him and the whole TBJ community as part of this initiative.
Yeah, thank you. Mark is someone that I did not know until I was into my rabbit myself. He grew up in Jeshurun, but before I got here, but he ended up marrying a former youth grouper of mine, Erica Greenbaum, now Erica Gerson, who became a rabbi, and thus Mark likes to proudly address himself as the rabbi's husband, which of course is the name of his podcast. And Mark on his own, besides accomplishing a lot in the world of business, is a real devoted Jew. The rabbi's husband deals with all kinds of interesting Jewish issues with wonderful thinkers with whom he interacts. He's written an outstanding book that came out, if I'm correct, Mark, about a year ago, if not 2, on Passover. He's been a speaker here, has taught Torah study. It's a great impact on my congregation, on my family. And I'll just say that when he came back to B'nai Jeshurun, he and Erica belonged to for about 5 or 6 years. I said, aren't you involved in some kind of ambulance corps in Israel? And he said, yeah, why? I said, because there was a woman who was 104 who just passed away in her dream and was to leave money to be able to have an ambulance that had her family's name on it. And that was our introduction to Eli Beer, who's one of the real mitzvah heroes of my life. So is Mark. And so Mark Gerson, love to introduce you to Los Angeles and to San Francisco. You're very well known here in Short Hills, and we so admire your work. We'd love to hear a few words from you.
Well, thank you, Matt. And I would just say that of all the congregations and institutions that have supported United Hatzalah since its founding, since Eli and I co-founded it more than 15 years ago, it's been Temple B'nai Jeshurun under your leadership, because of your leadership, that has stepped up every single time there's been an acute need, and when there's not been an acute need. It's you have led your congregation to supporting United Hatzalah, whether it's in a conflict or just the kinds of conflicts that happen all the time when people are choking, bleeding, accidents. Temple B'nai Jeshurun has been one of the greatest and most steadfast supporters that any organization has had, and certainly the case for us, United Hatzalah, and it's all because of you. So, yeah, I'm the co-founder and chairman of United Hatzalah, and I'll just say some words, really wise words that I learned from one of my fellow board members, Adele Sandberg, whose daughter Cheryl Sandberg is one of our top donors. And Adele, she told me this before COVID, and of course before this terrible war. She said, when I was a girl, I wondered why my parents didn't do more to help the Jews of Europe. And I vowed that if I ever had the opportunity to save Jews, I would do it. And then came the Soviet Jewry movement, and Adele and her husband, Joel, who was Ellie's guardian angel when Ellie was really dying of COVID 2 years ago in Miami. And thank God he didn't die, obviously, because of Joel, and Zev Neuwirth, who was Ellie's doctor in Miami, who is now the medical leader of the mission in Ukraine. But Adele and Joel said in the 70s, they became leaders, young leaders in the Soviet Jewry movement, because they said this was the opportunity at that moment, at that stage in their lives, to save Jews. And they were arrested in the Soviet Union many times and were real heroes in the Soviet Jewry movement. And then Adele told me a couple of years ago, she said, now I have my third opportunity to save Jews, and this is with United Hatzalah. And not only saving Jews, she pointed out, but now through Israel's spirit and that of the volunteers, we can save Jews and Gentiles, and anybody else who suffers trauma in Israel will be treated within 90 seconds by United Hatzalah volunteer. And she said, this is my opportunity to save Jews now. And now we have another opportunity that was obviously not predicted then, and it was due to this war from this evil madman that started a month ago. And this is really a once in a lifetime, hopefully, once in a lifetime opportunity that we have now to save Jews. And United Hatzalah saw this, and instantly, literally within hours, Dove and Ellie had marshaled hundreds of volunteers to be ready to go to Ukraine, Moldova, and they deployed that night. I mean, it was one of the only 2 times in Ellie and my almost 20-year friendship that Ellie ever called me on Shabbat. The other time was during the Nepal earthquake when they had to deploy that night. And he said the volunteers are working around the clock on Shabbat, and we need special funding in order to send them to the Moldova border, and they had already figured out how to set up humanitarian centers and field hospitals on the Moldova border within hours of this war breaking out. And so what we thought in the moment, it's really in the moment, would be a relatively quick operation. It's still ongoing now, and the needs are piling up. The needs are getting more, not less. And all the operational needs and the really incredible logistical accomplishment of Dove and his team is just mind-boggling. I was just in Jerusalem, and I saw it from the Jerusalem perspective. It's just unbelievable what they've done in such short time. But with all those tons of food and supplies and all those volunteers and all the other humanitarian equipment and all the everything in the field hospital, they all have one thing in common, which is they all cost a lot of money. And Ellie told me, he told me years ago, he said, Ellie never liked it when people would say, when people would say typically in a self-deprecating fashion, I only give money. Ellie's like, there's no such thing as only giving money. Ellie said, if it weren't for people giving money, we'd be working with Band-Aids. And that's always been true. And it's every bit as true now as it ever was. And so the costs have risen commensurate with this really awesome operation. And what we thought was going to be around $1 million is now about 10 times that. And thank God for the generosity of people around the world who've really stepped up to enable United Hatzalah to do its now internationally recognized. We saw Secretary Blinken yesterday. We've seen, there's a great video people should watch of Anderson Cooper interviewing Zev Neuwirth in Ukraine about a week ago, obviously easily findable. But is internationally recognized is important because it's really, we're all commanded to be a light unto the nations, and United Hatzalah is enabling us to be that. And it's a great honor to be able to support United Hatzalah at this time and to become the really indispensable, everyone who donates is the indispensable partner of these really sacred people who are dropping everything to go to the border, to go into Ukraine, to go to now multiple borders, to save those in need, to treat those in need, and to get everyone the humanitarian supplies, the medical treatment, and sometimes the exit that they can be facilitated. So really in honor of this amazing event, which is put together by 3 synagogues, one of which I grew up in, and I am so admiring of Matt and his leadership, which I've been so blessed to observe over the last more than 10 years now. So Erica and I, we're going to match all the donations raised pursuant to this event. So it'll be doubled, and it'll be, I'll just conclude by saying one thing. I was in San Diego yesterday at an event, and I was talking with a wise friend of mine who was there and had donated a lot of money. And, what we were saying was, no one's going to turn 120 and ever say, my only regret in life was helping those refugees coming out of Ukraine. I really wish I had that money. No one is going to say that. And if we know now that we will never regret a decision, then make the decision. So we're very happy to do what we can now. And I'm sure that everyone who joins us, to the extent they can, will be similarly gratified now and forever.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I just want to make sure everyone heard that, because sometimes you're on a webinar and, things come and they distract you. Right here in Los Angeles, we have an incredible event happening, which is the rain is falling. And that only happens a couple times a year. So I think people here are a little distracted by that. But when someone says, I'm willing to match every gift you make, my wife and I are stepping up, that's not something to be missed. So everybody who's on this call and anyone who is wanting to participate in this effort, I'm just going to ask Arjun to make sure that the link goes into the chat right now to make it really easy for you. You can click on that and give. If you've given already, give again, because as Mark said, the need continues to grow. If you've been following the headlines today, you're seeing these unbelievable images out of Mariupol and other parts of Ukraine. And we know that the need over the coming weeks and months is going to continue to be felt. So let's see if we can far surpass our goal of 200,000 and even double that. And it is a testament to your leadership, Mark, and to Ellie's leadership and everyone on this call. Thank you so much to Dovi and Linor and Michael and your teams on the ground, because I know it's dozens and dozens and dozens of volunteers. But without the funds, as Mark said, it's going to be Band-Aids, and we need more than Band-Aids. We need chemotherapy treatments. We need ambulances to be able to get in. We need airplanes to be able to get in. So let's all make sure that we're making those donations right now. And thank you to Mark for matching those. I just wanted to see if Matthew, Sid, if you had any more questions or any more comments you wanted to make, or if there's anything from our amazing panelists that they wanted to add, again, beyond just how heartfelt the gratitude is and how tremendous the need is.
I just wanted to express my gratitude for showing up today and giving people on our webinar this opportunity to connect to each other, but also to continue to support you. And so I hope that everybody who's here, of the over 50 people, they take the Hatzalah website and they send out an email today for more support on the ground, because every single one of us feels like, if we can't be there, what can we do? And if not now, when? So this is an if not now, Imatai moment for sure.
And yeah, thank you, Sid. I concur 100%. I would just say that, when we first started this, we thought, okay, can we do $100,000 between 2 or 3 synagogues? And I was worried, just because the challenges these days are really significant here at home. And my wife, Lauren, who's at a conference right now, said, first of all, there's no choice. When Ellie and Mark call in any kind of way, they're not calling for nothing. And then B, within 3 hours, I'm proud to say that the 2 synagogues did 100 within the first 3 hours. And we're now very close to 200. And Yoshi and I just had donors who called us. We're between the two of us, another 40 coming in. So make Mark and Erica reach more, further into the pockets. They do it with a lot of love and generosity, but there's a lot of work to do. The plane that we are resourcing, if I understand, Michael, is happening this week. I think it's Thursday that it arrives into Jerusalem, and but the rest of the money is going to go to all the other types of life-saving behaviors you've heard. And folks out there, it's almost cliche to those of us in the rabbinic community to save one life, save the world. when you deal with Hatzalah, you realize that each one of these lives is a whole world, and the impact that you've made on people is just extraordinary. And I'll end by saying I keep this coat. Ellie's still out there. Gave this to me many, many years ago, and I really shouldn't have it because I'm not sitting on a ambucycle or an ambulance, but it's one of the proudest pieces of clothing I have, and love our partnership with you and looking so forward to doing mitzvahs for many years to come. And by the way, just Michael, when you turn back, I see that the head of the EMT squad here in Short Hills is asking if you could put the link in so that they want to apply to work over there, that they'll be able to. This would be a great get if you can get this guy.
Yeah, let's put the, I think we already had the link in to donate, but let's put that link in again. So Arjun, if you can just put in the link for the campaign. While Matthew was talking, I went in and made another donation from Jacqueline and me and the girls, because I want to take advantage of Mark's generosity.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not going to miss that. So we just donated another $540. And I know Matthew Gewirtz told me that he would double any gift I made. So, so did I hear that right? I'm not sure.
You heard it, and then I said double, Sid said triple, so we were perfect.
Okay. Yeah, no, because he said, anything you can do, Yoshi, I can do twice as well. And I said, everybody knows that. So thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Sid and Dina. I know you've been incredibly supportive in every way as a leader and as a donor. But as we've said before, and we'll say it again, this right now is about getting money into the hands of people who can turn that money into mitzvahs that can save lives. As nice as it would be to send clothing and things like that, that's not what they need right now. They need dollars. And with those dollars, they can get medical supplies and they can get planes in. And obviously chartering a flight is not an inexpensive thing. It's, $100,000 to get that plane in. But when you think about what it means to bring 150 refugees back out into safety, that is absolutely priceless. What I thought we could end with, unless there's any other comments from our incredible panel, we could go back. Now we've got the audio working on that video that we saw earlier. Maybe we'll just end with that as the donations pour in. But any final words from Ellie or Linor, Dovi, Michael, or Dina or Mark? Feel free. Well, we're so grateful to you all, and thanks to all the participants. As soon as the webinar is over, this video will go out to all 3 congregations, and therefore, anyone who you think really wanted to tune in and couldn't because it was in the middle of the workday or they had something else come up, send it to them and tell them make that donation quickly, and we can still get a match on that. And my gratitude to everybody, especially to my colleagues Sid and Matthew for doing these programs with us, and to Ellie and Mark for creating United Hatzalah, and for all the lives you've saved and all the inspiration you've given us, and to everybody there on the ground like Linor and Dovi and Michael, your support from Geneva, and Dina for bringing this to our congregation. We couldn't be more grateful. Arjun, why don't you go ahead and put the video on, and let's see if we can get the sound working this time. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a wonderful day. Toda rabah.
God bless you.